Hey there, so today's video is about managing the message. And it's really important to manage the message. And I'm hoping that if you've just been diagnosed with cancer, that you're getting this, watching this video sooner rather than later, because messaging is one of the first things that we have to do. We got to tell our loved ones, we got to tell people that we work with, people who need to know what's going on. And so how you do that is really important because it affects your life so greatly. For my part, I just didn't want to put anything just out there and just tell tons of people right away, because I knew there would be this large influx of people asking me, saying, hey, what's going on? And, I heard you have cancer and da-da-da-da, give me a full update. And that I would just be spending all this time regurgitating and parroting the same message over and over again. So one of the things that I decided early on was that, hey, I'm going to tell my family first, of course, and I was going to tell them all personally. So I took the time to call each one of my family members, my closest family members, and tell them, hey, I have cancer, and just to kind of have that personal connection. I didn't want to do it in an email. I didn't want to do it in a text. I didn't want to leave a voicemail for somebody when I called them and they didn't answer, because, it's a really important message and I wanted to have that connection with them. So I did that, and then I slowly started to expand from there, telling people. And I'm glad that I did that, because just what I said happened. As people know, they love you, they want to know information. So even them, they're kind of calling back and saying, every other day, like, well, how are you feeling now? And give me an update. And of course, all the information that you're getting, it flows very slowly. And, people have a billion questions, just like you're going to have a billion questions. And you just can't get all the answers right away. So I knew that was the case. And so one of the things I told people is I said, look, I don't want to give a play-by-play update of my cancer condition, because it's just too taxing, it's tiring, and all of a sudden your entire life becomes about your illness. And yes, it will. You're going to be a lot of doctor appointments, and a lot of, tests and things are going to start being lined up once you're diagnosed with cancer. But does it have to become your entire life? No, it doesn't. I mean, in fact, it's really important that you preserve the life that you've been leading, because you want to have some kind of normalcy. And that's really important just for your emotional health and your mental health. And I think that also coincides with our physical health, right? If we're worn down emotionally and mentally, then it affects our body, it affects our physical being. And so it's important to manage that messaging and let it out there slowly. As you widen the group, more and more people will know, and we will have to answer more questions. But again, what I did is I told everybody I'm not going to do a play-by-play thing. So what I'm going to do is, I spoke to you today, I told you what's up, and I'm going to put you on an email, and every once in a while I'll put out an email update that will bring you current with what's going on with me. But even that might come like once a month or something like that. It's just not going to be a regular touch point, because again, I want to have some normalcy. When we talk, I want to call you and I want to talk about fishing or music or art or whatever it is we had going on in our family, and not have the conversation solely be about my cancer condition and where I am in my treatment, because that just, it's too much, man. It becomes overwhelming. And then also you stop hearing about your friends and families, what's going on with them. I mean, and that's really important too, is that, you don't lose that connection. And I certainly didn't want to lose that. And so I made an effort to say, okay, we talked a little bit about me, and now let's talk about you. And that helps, but you have to kind of drive that. You have to kind of control that and manage that, and let people know so that they're aware that that's what you feel and that's what you want. And yeah, it's really critical. I mean, the other thing is that I didn't put anything out on social media because I knew that if I put it out there on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, that then it just becomes its own little animal, and it makes its own decisions. You know, all of a sudden, it can spread really fast, far and wide. It can go to people who don't really care about you, or maybe on this kind of very shallow level that, even if they're like, oh, hey, we met, and you were becoming a good friend, or I really liked you, and, I heard this is happening to you. It's great to hear some feedback from some of those people, but at the same time, they're not in your close circle, and it's not probably people that you want to be connected with on that level, at least not right away. And again, people will comment. Not everybody's a good writer when it comes to commenting. So sometimes people write things, and since they're not a good writer, it comes out in kind of a weird way, like it might seem insensitive or curt, or just written in a way where it doesn't have any pleasantries, or it doesn't have any proper emotion like you'd get when you're talking to somebody. And that just has to do with people's ability to write. A lot of people, the majority of people, are really bad writers anyway. And so if you rely on that, or a short number of characters to relay a message, it's hard to kind of have all that emotion in there. So with a sensitive topic like this, that gets lost, and maybe that's not such a great idea either, because you will become sensitive to a lot of things, and how people respond to you becomes important. And because you're dealing with so much, your ability to kind of have a thick skin, it's thinned a little bit. So again, putting it out there on social media isn't such a great thing to do. So really think long and hard about before you do something on Facebook. I think some people, they're really into like spreading the word and putting it out there on Facebook. And I mean, of course, look, I'm doing this pancreatic cancer channel, but actually, to be perfectly honest with you, is I've kind of kept it a bit anonymous, because I created this channel for not for my family, not for the people closest to me, but for other people who have pancreatic cancer who happen to come to YouTube looking for information. So I want to relay these things, but it's not the personal me. It's not my personal group of friends that I'm messaging to. This is out there for, people who've been diagnosed with cancer and who I want to help, so there are people I don't know, but I felt this need to kind of do this in order to help them. And so even though I'm using a social media platform for it, I mean, there's a reason, and this works really well for that. But for messaging those personal thoughts and feelings about my struggle and what I'm doing to my family, and where I'm kind of putting out, kind of that deeper thing, the way I relate to my family is not how I'm necessarily relating to you, because, we don't have the history, you and I, but with your family, it's quite different, and you don't obviously want to hear about what my Uncle Bob thinks of this, or my Aunt Lucy thinks, but indeed the information that I'm putting out there is important, and hopefully it helps you. So I digress, back to managing the message. So think about, if you're going to put it out on social media, what you're doing and why you're doing it. Again, think about it before you hit that send button or that post button. A lot of people, when I started talking to them, I say a lot, a few people told me, hey, you gotta use this thing called the Caring Bridge, which is a website that's made for people who are sick, and they can connect with a large group of people. The idea there is that you use this one outlet to message out to everybody. The last thing I did, and when my friend proposed it to me, I said, look, I don't want to populate a website I don't want to add a to-do item to my already long expanded to-do list. I think that's a great idea. It's a great website. It helps a lot of people, but for me, it wasn't my thing. I'm like, look, I'm just going to connect with the people that I love, and then when it comes to these other things, I will put out this email message once a month or once every 2 months that gives some important details. But beyond that, I didn't want to have to be locked into something. You don't, like, you're going to find that you have all these things to do, and so when you start piling on the to-do items, that becomes very overwhelming. So when it comes to managing the message, think about that. If you commit to something like that, then all of a sudden you might find yourself having to write, a blog post every week or something. And again, it makes you focus solely on your illness. And I think there are times when we do have to focus solely on our illness, but not every single minute of the day. So managing the message can help you break away from that. It can help you try to create some normalcy in your life so that when you do talk to people, what you're talking about isn't always your illness. So you can still have that normal relationship with people. And when you tell people that, they'll understand, and it kind of takes a while for them, sometimes for it to take hold. Like I have one of my very best friends, he kind of still does this thing where it's like he asked all these questions that I can't answer, and it's like, hey bud, I love you, man, but you every time I call you, because we've always talked on a regular basis, and we'll talk about chess or the latest football game or something, and then he's like, well, so what about this and what about that, and I'm just like, stop, let's talk about this other thing, because you just rest assured that whatever important things come down the pipe that are happening with me, I will tell you, because you are my buddy and I love you and I want you to know. So I'm not keeping anything from you, so you don't have to constantly be pinging me or anything. It'll come. So let's get back to being friends and just trying to be normal. I mean, it really is important to try to keep that normalcy. So the other thing about the message, when you do write those emails, or however you choose to send out if you do anything where you're kind of putting out a message that goes to multiple people all at once, like my email, I found that when you give out details, try not to be too specific, because one thing you're going to discover is that as you go to you go to a doctor's appointment and they say, hey, we're going to do these tests, and then next time you come in, we'll be able to evaluate these tests and we'll find out the answer to X question. Well, the one thing you're going to find out with cancer is that things change day by day. And maybe you go do those tests and then you're going to have a meeting with the doctor and you're going to find out the answer to X question. But then you get in there and they say, oh yeah, that didn't work, but guess what? There's this new thing. Your cancer has spread to this other area, and it's changed our entire view of how we're looking at your illness and how we're looking at your care and what we're going to do moving forward. So don't make any promises about what you're going to tell folks. Just tell them what you know. And when it comes to upcoming results and things you're waiting for, kind of keep that a bit nebulous. It's not, you don't have to tell everything about it. Just kind of say, oh yes, I'm going to have some test, and when the details of those tests come to light, I'll share them with everybody. But know that things do change. I mean, for me, I had some chemotherapy, and I knew that I was going to go in and find out whether the chemo worked or not. And I told everybody, I'm like, yeah, so this is a big appointment with a doctor, and I'm really excited because I'm hoping that it works well, and that then I'll know how many more chemo treatments I got to go to kind of, beat this down. And then I went into my appointment, and he's like, oh yeah, it didn't work. Forget about that, because your cancer has spread to this other part of your body, and now we've completely changed what your care is going to be. And that was like a mind-blowing moment. And what was important wasn't important anymore. It was this other thing that became important. And so a lot of people were kind of waiting for that answer, because I had sent out a message saying, I'll share the results, after I have this appointment. And people were saying, well, so what happened? What happened? Because they knew the date the appointment was, and they figured they'd find out in that coming week. And it took me a while to figure it all out. And I had to have multiple appointments immediately with a doctor that was kind of determining what the next steps were. And so I didn't have all the information. So I waited. People were pinging me. And then, it took me almost 4 weeks, almost a whole month to get out the next message, where I said, look, here were all these changes. So again, when you put out those big blanket messages, think about what you're putting out there and just kind of put out what you know without any kind of promises of what's forthcoming, because there's a lot of uncertainty with cancer, and certainly it isn't anything we can control. So think about that when you're doing this messaging. And I think if you have these little nuggets of info I'm giving you right now, that you kind of apply them as you start to message out to people. As you go along, you'll see what's kind of working with your friends and family, and you'll also find out what works with you, and you'll be able to adjust that, how you put out that message. So so think about messaging and managing the message. It's very, very important. And for yourself, for your sanity, for your, the time that you're going to be applying to messaging to people, to kind of dealing with that aspect of your life. And then also, it does affect your kind of emotional state and everything. And then it affects your loved ones, because, of course, they want to know about you and they're concerned. And so this is a way to kind of keep them informed in a way that satisfies their need to understand what's going on with you, but it also satisfies them to a level where they don't feel like they have to constantly connect with you about it or ask about it. So that way you can spend more time when you talk with them talking about other things in life that are important to you as well. So manage your message. That's it. Manage your message. Be careful when it comes to social media. Remember that things are always changing with cancer, and so there's nothing that you can predict about it that will be right on the money, because it is unpredictable. And so as we go through this journey, you'll figure out what works and what makes you feel good and what you can handle. So again, I hope if you have gotten diagnosed with cancer that you're watching this video sooner rather than later, so that you can manage your message from the very beginning. But I guess even if you're midway through and you watch this video, it'll still be helpful, because at any point in time you can change how you do manage your message. So, and don't be afraid to do that, because you remember this is something that your illness, it's up to you. The buck stops with you at every point. So don't be afraid to change the way you're doing things. There's no right, there's no wrong, and you should just do the best you can in what works for you. So think about that. So until next time, manage your message.